Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. Very excited for today's episode, but first, as I always do, I like to explain why I wear the shirt. It's not a proclamation. Unafraid is a company owned by a man named Eddie Penny, and Eddie Penny changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I'm a 30-year medically retired police officer, and I would say shortly before retiring, I started struggling a little bit. I was having bouts of anger, depression, rage, and they all kind of came to a head as I sat down in the spring of 2023 to watch a Sean Ryan podcast episode in which he interviewed Eddie Penny, former Navy SEAL, Team 6 member. During the course of the interview, Eddie was recounting the Extortion 17 incident, which Chinook was shut down in Afghanistan, killing all 38 aboard, including 17 SEALs. It was the largest loss of community in one event ever. Most of them were members of SEAL Team 6. Included in dead was Jason Workman, Eddie's best friend. And as Eddie told that story, I simultaneously began thinking about a call that I had buried 5 years before involving a 2-year-old found floating in a pool, and no other way to say it. As Eddie began to cry, now I know I was subconsciously given permission to do so, and I began weeping like a baby. Kind of put two and two together. Shortly thereafter, realized I had suffered from some sort of PTSD in my career. Knew I didn't want to live with that the rest of my life. I'd seen many guys struggle with that. I didn't want to be this ornery guy who hated everyone and everything. So I started looking for modalities to heal. Didn't think traditional therapy was going to do it for me in this case. I needed something more radical for this radical pain I was feeling. And I came upon psychedelics. I had heard about them for about 2 years prior. I kind of dismissed them very quickly. But now as I watched Sean Ryan's another podcast, hearing about the journey of mostly special force operators coming back from war, self-professed broken men, and then their consequent healing journeys, I thought these medicines were for me. So in my research, I kind of came upon ayahuasca and felt a calling. I then journeyed with ayahuasca after moving to Florida in late 2023, my wife and I. So during the course of a 3-ceremony weekend, I essentially changed my life. As I came out of the first one, the universe told me that my PTSD had been healed, and it's we're never truly healed. It's a journey, not a destination. There's just no straight healing linear graph that we're ever going to be on. You know, life hits us with things every day, but essentially I was healed from that. Also told me that my life's purpose was to go forth to help other first responders and vets heal theirs. I said okay out loud, not knowing how I'd implement it, but one thing I decided to do is start a podcast to do for others what Sean Ryan did for me. And in that, I bring on mostly first responders and veterans, both male and female. We tell their stories, the highest of highs, lowest of lows. And my hopes is that you men and women who are going through it can identify with them, can gain inspiration, can gain hope, know that there's hope, and you'll raise your hand to get that healing that you need. So in that, very excited to introduce my next guest. She is Marisol Salgado García. Marisol retired from the United States Marine Corps in August 23 after 20 years of service as an aviation supply and logistics officer. Born in Mexico and raised in Texas, she became a U.S. citizen while still in high school and entered the Marine Corps shortly after 9/11, driven by a desire to learn how to protect herself and reclaim a sense of agency. I just had a cataract surgery the other day, guys, so no glasses. She deployed multiple times to Iraq, including in 2005 at Asad Air Base during intense combat operations, and later supported operations connected to the Benghazi crisis while assigned in Spain. Her career spanned both enlisted and officer service, with senior leadership roles overseeing complex aviation supply and logistics systems, supporting multi-billion-dollar programs, and later managing the V-22 tilt-rotor aircraft weapons system portfolio focused on fleet readiness worldwide. Her career culminated as a deputy commander within a NATO logistics squadron in Sicily, leading troops from over 30 foreign nations. Marisol carried unresolved trauma from child sexual assault and military sexual assault, compounded by cultural shame and silence rooted in her upbringing. Like many service members, she relied on discipline and achievement to cope, while privately struggling with anxiety, suicidal ideations, depression, body shame, and the long-term effects of trauma. Coming from a disciplined military background, Marisol viewed psychedelics as drugs and rejected them outright. Her perspective changed only after educating herself and reaching the limits of conventional care. In 2019, during a period of personal crisis, she sought healing through plant-based and psychedelic medicines, an experience that fundamentally shifted how she understood trauma, self-worth, and recovery. Through this healing process, Marisol rebuilt her relationship with her body and identity. Unlike alcohol and endless entrepreneurial endeavors, which she had previously used to numb emotional pain, these medicines required honesty, accountability, and integration. As a reflection of that healing, she later competed in a national bodybuilding competition rooted in self-respect and embodiment. Today, Marisol is in Florida, where she manages real estate properties in the U.S. and abroad as a step toward her long-term vision of creating a self-sustaining, holistic retreat center. As a Latina of indigenous heritage from Miyoki, Chihuahua, Mexico, she is committed to educating and advocating within the Latino community and supporting responsible, ethical pathways to healing for veterans, athletes, first responders, caregivers, and marginalized populations. Marisol, so glad to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Did I mispronounce anything? I saw you smiling at the end.
No, you're good. I always love hearing how people are gonna say my hometown, Meoki, because it's not a common name. Even like people in Mexico have a hard time and mocking
Really?
of it. So yeah, I always get a kick.
Nice. So I'm doing all right for myself here. That's great. The gringo did good.
Yeah, it almost sounds like
Yeah,
Meow.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, the gringo did good.
It's so funny. So yeah, that's a lot to cover, and we're gonna do it. Let's start with childhood. Just let people get to know you. Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? Who'd you grow up with?
Well, I grew up. Well, one again. Thanks for having me, and it's been such a great thing to like just message back and forth, and a lot of the synergies on what we're working both of us behind the scenes. So thank you for
Absolutely.
having me here, and this opportunity to connect with yourself and others. So my childhood is like similar to a lot of immigrants, right? We, as kids, we get left behind when our parents immigrate into the U.S. So I grew up with my parents going back and forth into the U.S. and Mexico. So a year in the U.S., a year in Mexico. So I was a gypsy from a very early age, which I think why the Marine Corps fits so well later on for me of moving every 2 years to a new duty station. And I grew up like, I was the smallest kid out of, I don't know, a butt ton of cousins. But most of the time I was still like the outcast because I was either too small to play with my older cousins or too big to play with my little cousins. But I hung out most of the time with my grandfather and my grandmother. He was a fisherman by trade, entrepreneur, and watched my grandparents and my parents too, just, work endlessly to build their dream life in a sense. And then I think the last time we illegally immigrated into the U.S. was July 4th, which is on my birthday, and I was turning 9 that day. And my mom was like, "Look, Mija, they're doing fireworks for you." And this is before I knew it was Independence Day, so I was like super excited. And then I learned later on, I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mom. It's actually Independence Day. It's not."
At least you rode that high until you
It
found
was
out.
fun. Yeah, I rolled that high until I found out and started actually learning English. So it was always like trying to assimilate to my own Mexican culture every time I would go back to the U.S. and then learning a whole other culture every time I would come into the U.S. And the language barrier, right? It's like I'm born in Mexico, primarily raised in Spanish, and then coming into the U.S., getting thrown into ESL, English as a second language, for those that don't know what ESL means. But, whatever English I would retain each time that we would go back from Mexico to the U.S., it was tough. And then it wasn't easy for my parents either, having to work less than minimum wage. My dad worked in construction, myriad of jobs. And so did my mom. And, and I've talked about this before in different podcasts and just in postings that I've done is like one of the things of growing up that way. And this is not to blame my parents or anything, but you leave your child at the care of somebody that you think you can trust, right? It's a whether it's an uncle or an aunt or a friend that you're living with, and unfortunately, it exposes kids to things that um, no kid should be exposed to. And it wasn't until many, many years later, after coming back from my first deployment in Iraq, that I finally told my mom, of the one instance that I felt comfortable telling her about. And yeah, it's a childhood was unique, and as I've been on this journey, I think a lot of us in the military come to find out that we experience sexual trauma as kids, and we just kind of repressed that in our childhood and never spoke
Yeah, and
about it.
it's
So, but overall, I was a happy kid. I grew up running around, kind of a tomboy, riding my bike. My parents had a restaurant in Mexico even when I was growing up, so like the restaurant industry was known to me. So, in all, I mean, like minus the sexual trauma, I think overall, looking back, I had a pretty happy childhood overall, in the best way that
okay.
I could.
Yeah, I'm sorry they had to go through that. Number one, and I don't want to get into too deeply, but was this a relative or this was friends?
This was a friend of my uncle, and then the other ones were roommates of my mom because my parents split up a couple of times. Um, and yeah, so it's most sexual assaults happen by somebody that you know. It's very rarely when it happens, you know. Well, I don't want to put percentages, but most of the time it happens from
Yeah,
somebody that you know and that
yeah,
you
it does.
trust.
And I bring on men and women who talk about it, and I give you guys kudos for doing so because I know it's got to be difficult. But um, I just want to highlight the fact that I never realized how many men and women have been abused until I started. And it's funny saying that because I was a police officer for 30 years, so I've seen it firsthand, and it's horrendous. But the amount of people, I just never realized how high it is. I think that the statistics are 20% of men and 40% of women. I say you could pretty much almost double each of those. And I've only become aware because I've been in so many ceremonies now, and it comes up, and then people openly talk about it. Additionally, on my podcast, men and women will bring it up to just to let men and women who are going through it now know you're not alone, know you did nothing wrong, know that it's something that is probably buried for most people. Some people are not even aware of it until they journey with psychedelics, but it's something that's got to be healed. It you stop growing at a certain point. If you were abused at 8 years old, in many respects, your maturity, much of your development was stunted at that point. And I don't care how much time passes, you still have to go through and process that pain because it affects every part of your life. And again, know you're not alone. Know you did nothing wrong. And I'm sorry for what you went through, but raise your hand and you can get the help. Um, it's incredible to me how many predators are out there. It is mind-boggling, in fact. So again, I'm sorry you had to go through it, but I give you kudos for openly talking about it now because you're going to change someone's life when they hear your story. Today's episode is brought to you by Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, a veteran-owned, family-run clinic led by a retired first responder. At Cutting Edge, they help men and women rebuild strength, focus, and vitality through advanced hormone therapy, peptides, and performance-based weight management. Whether you've served your country, your community, or your family, Cutting Edge helps you get your edge back safely, professionally, and with people who understand what service takes out of you. Cutting Edge offers individualized care with no monthly fees or contracts. Learn more at cuttingedgetestosteronetherapy.com. Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, built by those who serve for those who still do.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. And it's as I've been going through this, it's like you read, you come up, you hear all these and see all these different quotes, right? Like one of the quotes that I come across quite often is like, when you're able to share your story and it's no longer from a place of anger, fear, sadness. Not to say that like that emotion like tears. I'm a crier. Like I get happy, I cry. I
Yep.
get sad, I cry. I get angry, I cry. And it's like, but when you're able to share your story and it's no longer pulling you back or crippling you, that's when like you kind of notice that the healing has started, has taken place, and you're evolving, and that you can talk about it with people. And I think I finally reached that point in my life where I can talk about it. Um, and it was definitely a step, coming back from Iraq and telling my mom about it, and then telling my brother. I'm about 10 years older than my brother, and I felt it was important for him to know because he has a daughter, right? And she's a single kid right now, super, as any toddler. Every person they see, like they want to hug,
Sure.
and a kid is amicable
Yeah.
with everybody. They don't understand stranger
Yep.
danger,
They're like a piece of
especially when you have
clay.
candy or something
Yeah.
that they want. Yeah. So like telling that to my brother, I was like, hey, look, this is why it's important for you to know your friends, but then also know that there's, you can trust your friends, but often, this is what could happen. I'm not saying that it will, but it's like, but be aware of, what you're
Yeah.
bringing into your home and where you're leaving my niece, because like she's the only niece, and of course we're all like super protective of her. Um, but yeah, it's that journey when you're able to experience something and then share and talk about it from no longer a crippling place, but from something that like it doesn't no longer define you. It helps you help others essentially, which I think it's a reason why Phoenix for me resonates so much. And you rise from the ashes, you rise from the wounds, you rise from that, and something in your life is not the definitive factor of who you are now. You can evolve and grow from that, by the grace of God. And sometimes people need psychedelics, that Spartan kick, to kind of help them reset. And that's what it was for me. It was like I was so sick and tired of like feeling unworthy, feeling that I always had to be chasing something in order to prove that I wasn't tainted and that I was worthy of love from a man, but more importantly, that I was worthy of love from myself. So the picture that I shared with you in the competitions, there's the bikini one and then there's the figure one, and you know more about competitions.
Right.
You can tell which one's which based on
Oh,
your
yeah.
wife can definitely tell. The bikini is different for one and the other. On nationals, the day that I was at nationals, I was actually not in my best state. I had gone in a fight with my then boyfriend and coach, so my cortisol levels went up, and that is the main, like the last thing you want to do
Yeah.
when you're about to hit the stage, right? Like be upset, because then all your vascularity just goes to crap. And that's exactly what happened. Like we'd gone to an argument that morning, and I'm just like, I did all of this, and here I am at the national stage, and he still doesn't love me. But it wasn't so much about him at that point. Like it, after like sitting in the backstage, I was like, it's not about him. And this was before I did ayahuasca. So I started like saying, like, there's something else that's out there, because even if I'm in the best shape of my life and I'm still waiting for somebody to accept me, I was like, this isn't normal. This can't be right. So unbeknownst to me, almost 6, 7 months later, went down to Peru and did ayahuasca.
Excellent. Yeah, we're going to talk all about that journey. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people looking for acceptance and, attention, and unfortunately looking in the wrong places sometimes until we heal, and then things change drastically. So, all right, let's continue the trajectory now. You're going back and forth to Mexico. So, what finally propels you guys to come here permanently?
Ooh, I don't think I ever asked my parents that. I think it was just my parents' desire of building a better life, that at the time we probably could have had in Mexico. Um, and traveling back and forth was getting taxing. My brother had been born, lucky for him, he was born in Orange County in California, so he didn't have to go through the whole immigration, the
Yep.
crazy lengthy process. Um, So that was part of it too. Like my parents decided to immigrate one final time and then start the resident and citizenship process. Now, once you're here, you can't leave once you're in that because you get your paperwork gets
Okay.
thrown out the window essentially. I don't know if that's still the case. But yeah, turned 9, so this was back in 95. Moved to Texas and then established roots in a little town called Cactus. And from there, moved to Dalhart, Texas, another half hour away. And that's where my parents lived. They worked multiple jobs and eventually opened a restaurant using my grandmother's recipes on my mom's side. And that became our family thing. My brother grew up with the restaurant, and now he and his wife run it
Nice.
in Texas. So that
Okay.
became home
And how was
essentially.
life for you growing up as a teen in Texas?
Uh, yeah, it was at the time that we moved. I would say Dalhart was still pretty racist. We were, I mean, there was Latinos there, but the prominent, it was like white American um, and country people. So even just as us starting the restaurant, it was a culture shift of getting them used to authentic Mexican food
Right.
versus Tex-Mex food. So like changing their mind on like what salsa is versus gravy on enchiladas. Um, and then in school, it was a matter of like, you have, it's a small little town, it's like 8,000 people, but yet it mattered if your parent was, especially in sports, if you were like the daughter or the son of, to be able to play in varsity or
A lot
JV.
of politics, huh?
So that was interesting growing up. And then a couple of times I got in trouble in school because I went to school in Mexico and now I'm going to school in the US. So the school system was much further behind in mathematics and science
Really?
in the US than
Wow.
it was in Mexico. Yeah, so I was at a higher level in mathematics coming into the US in 5th grade. I was like 7th grade level, and then I was uh, for like Mexico school system, and in the US I was doing, to me it was like 4th, 5th grade
Wow.
level
I would have
math.
thought the opposite.
So I was like, I had to like, yeah, no, I was behind, and I'd get in trouble because I wouldn't show my work, and I would do a lot of the math in my head. I was like, "You're supposed to show your work,"
Oh yeah.
you're like, if you kids like do that, like, there's like
Yep.
10 pages of showing your work. I'm like, but the answer is right here. They're like, "Oh, you cheated, use a calculator." I was like, "No, give me the thing, and I'll show you right now," and I would do it, but I'd get in trouble. And then history was fun because Mexico has their indigenous history of what it teaches, and then there's the U.S. history. So then, when I was in school, there was a couple of times that I got sent to the principal's office over that because I would argue with the teacher, and I'm like, "Well, that's what your history book teaches." I was like, "But Mexico has this instead," so it's like
Yeah.
just telling the truth.
That's so funny. Kids calling a teacher out. So how was it
Yeah.
to make friends? Easy for you or difficult? Were you finding it tough?
Uh, it was. I made friends more with older people, especially as I got uh, as I started working in the restaurant with my parents. I honestly didn't have much time for friendships growing up. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I'm getting up for cross country practice, be on the bus for school at 7 in the morning. So my interaction, whatever I had with other kids, was in school, and it would go back to like, have you seen Selena? It was like we're two Mexicans for the Mexicans and we're two Americans for the Americans.
I
Some
think I
have you
saw a
seen that?
little bit of it back in the day.
There's a quote in Yeah, there's a quote in there where like James Edward James Olmos is telling Jennifer Lopez, and they're like talking about how difficult it is to be a Mexican American. So that was like the constant thing that I always would battle with. I was like, I was not Mexican enough to hang out with the other Mexican kids because I was playing sports. Meanwhile, the other Mexican kids were worried about lowriders and drinking on the weekend already, even though all of us were underage. And then I was too Mexican to hang out with the white kids, and also like, I wasn't wealthy enough either. So it was like I would hang out with the skater
Right.
boys. So skater boys were my friends for the most part, and
The
the
Goths.
goth
You were hanging
kids.
with the Goths. That's pretty funny. It's amazing. Like you see these movies and all the types of kids in high school, but it's literally the way. That's the way it was. You had all these groups. They were very defined. I don't want to say they were rigid, but yeah, you could tell who was who just by looking at them. So it's just so funny the way high school is. All right, so as you're getting ready to graduate, what are you thinking in terms of your future?
Ooh, um, I was getting ready to graduate. It was a matter of a lot of the things that were going on in my childhood. Excuse me. Um, Started kind of coming about because I didn't go out, right? I spent most of my time at the restaurant or doing some sport, basketball, track, cross country, volleyball. And then the rest of the time that I was not doing that, I was with my mom. My mom was my best friend, still is my best friend. And as I was getting close to graduation, is when 9/11
Okay.
happened. So on one side of the spectrum, 9/11 happens. On the other side, there's this group of guys that are making a bet as to who's going to get to me first,
Oh,
kind of
really?
thing. And remembering my own sexual trauma as a kid, I told myself there's no way in hell I'm going through that again as an adult, almost an adult now as a young woman. And when 9/11 happened, it felt like the next day all the recruiters were at our school. And the first one, of course, in like Army, Navy, Air Force, uh, Coast Guard walk into our gymnasium, and I, of course, set eye on the Marine because he's like the super, walking straight and very well poised, and it,
Yeah,
it
squared
just caught
away.
my eye. And started talking to him about the Marine Corps, and then, of course, as every other Marine back in the 2000s, you saw the Slay the Dragon commercial, and that was the thing. And it was also my parents were arguing a lot at the time, and it was a matter of like it was only a matter of when they
Okay.
were going to get divorced. So having that in mind, three things, and I started talking more to the Marine recruiter, and essentially decided at 16 that I was going to go into the Marine Corps, and then I had to convince my parents, my mom in particular, that I was going
How'd
into the
that
Marine
go?
Corps, and which yeah, that was the longest
I can
argument with my
imagine.
mom. From being always attached at the hip to now I'm telling my mom, who's envisioning that I'm going to go off to college and do these other things, and then for her to grasp that now I am volunteering to go into a war environment to serve a country that's not ours, but now this is the country that we call home. I think that was
I'm sure.
tough. And then couple that with, my parents' divorce, my grandfather, who was the very interesting relationship between my mother and my grandfather. Till this day, I think a lot of the ways that we grew up, we get it from my grandfather as well. The Garcia side, yeah, like when things get tough, like the eyebrow goes up, and you pull up your boots and you get
Yep.
shit done, kind of
Pull up
thing.
those bootstraps.
So yeah, so when my grandfather died, it all happened like in the month the from January to May 2023 was so many things that were going on. Um, and then I left to boot camp July
Of
14th.
'03.
So it was interesting.
Okay.
Of '03, yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, I can't imagine a girl. I mean, it's bad enough to where guys are convincing mom and dad to go into the military, but I can't imagine someone's, if I had a daughter, like turning around and be like, Dad, I want to enter the military, especially after 9/11. I wouldn't have been too happy about that. But were they supportive when you finally made a decision?
Once I finally painted the picture to her as to what was going on and why I had decided to her, like I didn't tell her about the bet, and definitely hadn't told her about the sexual trauma as a kid or any of that. That was something that I did disclose to my recruiter at the time, and he's like, "Why are you so um, decisive that you're going to join the Marine Corps?" Which actually he ended up having me apply for the Naval
Really?
Academy instead. But eventually, my mom came around, and because I told her, I was like, "Look, woman, if you don't sign now, you're holding me back from getting my dress blues for free, getting incentive PSC. Like, so I
Yeah.
gave her a business proposal essentially as to, what was going to happen if she didn't sign when I was still underage at 17. I was like, either you sign now or the day that I turn 18, that is the first place I'm going to go. So I was like, but just so you know, you're holding me back on progressing, getting advanced. I was like, so if you're afraid that I'm going to be in the front lines, I was like, well, this was going to happen. So I made her an offer she couldn't refuse.
Yeah, I wasn't aware. So what do you receive now if you sign and you're under 18?
I don't know if that's still the case now, but so if you sign before you graduate, you have the opportunity, or before you go to the DEP program, I think if you recruit 3 other people, that was kind of like the incentives that recruiters would give. After 2 people, you get your dress blues for free, which is like $800 uniform. And then the other one was that you get incentive PFC. So instead of starting as a private, you start as an E1, you start as an E2 upon graduation. You're still getting paid as an E1 while you're in boot camp. And then if you had any college credits, it would also kind of help you get promoted faster just from the get-go. So I already had a college credit, so even though I didn't recruit anybody, I would still get incentive PFC just because of the number of college credits I had by the time I graduated.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
I don't know if that
So you are taking AP courses. Like you were a serious student in high school.
Yeah. I took college classes in high school, which was one of the other arguments with my mom and my dad as they were getting divorced because he refused to pay for them, and then I ended up working at McDonald's so that I could pay for my college classes.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be an interesting dynamic. All right, so you make the decision, you go off to boot camp, and how do you find it?
Culture shock. I'd never been around anyone naked before, so you get thrown into a squad bay and they strip you down to nothing. You're sleep deprived for the first, I think, like 48 hours kind of thing.
Okay.
It's intentional. As you get to boot camp, there's no comm, so you get that 30-second or 1-minute phone call. You get to call home. You have a script. So if you watch some of the boot camp videos, that's exactly what it's like. You get yelled at out of the bus. You run inside a building. You're like face to the wall, and then eventually you're sitting down, face to the desk, and you're not allowed to talk to anybody, and everything's super controlled. It's almost like you're running into prison kind of thing. And then having that phone call with my mom, she wasn't expecting it, and so I give her like this robotic phone call. And when I was finally able to call her right before graduation, it was it was a culture shock. I mean, you're going from an environment. For me, it was very sheltered. I didn't grow up with when my parents beat me or anything like. I didn't watch my dad being he would get drunk at home, and especially when my parents were fighting. So as compared to other kids, mine was fine. But then when I would engage with some of the other girls that were going through boot camp, and they would tell me the horror stories that they were escaping from, essentially, and it seemed crazy to me. And then I would remember what my recruiter would tell me. It was like, you don't fit the mold of going into the Marine Corps. Like, you should have gone Air Force or gone the officer route right away. And yeah, it was interesting. The physical part to me was fun. Like, I would make fun of my drill instructor because I was faster than them.
I bet they love that.
Yeah. Boot camp in a sense it sucked, but it was also fun. Because I'm a masochist, and in that aspect, the physical pain. But yeah, it was the discipline that I already had from my mom and my grandfather helped a lot going into boot camp. So understanding of how, especially Mexicans, I don't know if just Mexicans, but at least with my family, it's everything had to be, white glove cleaned, and my mom would go through and inspect it. So when I got to boot camp, I was like, God, I did this shit all the time at home. This is not any different. But for other girls, it was oh my God, this is torture. And I'm like, Your mom didn't make it clean?
Your mom didn't do white glove inspections? Get out of here. Yeah, that's probably a unique feature of your mom's overall. So, all right, you cruise through, it sounds like. And then where do you get stationed? And how about deployment? Is that very near in your future afterwards?
After graduation, we have another school. It's called Marine Combat Training for 3 weeks in North Carolina, and then from there you get your job assignment and then your duty station. So I got stationed in Camp Pendleton, California, which was amazing for me. I was super excited to go back to California now as an adult and having lived there so many times growing up, and being able to see it now as from a different lens. And we kept getting toyed around for a little bit about deploying, and eventually get deployed to Iraq in 2005. And so I was in Asad Air Base for 9 months the first time, and then the second time it was in 2007 with the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit. So I did 2 deployments
Okay.
while I was enlisted.
And anything noteworthy during the deployments? Noteworthy?
Anything what?
Any good stories?
I mean, when I listen to my stories compared to my boyfriend's stories, he was a 2-7, Second Marine Division, 7th Battalion. They have a documentary called The Forgotten Battalion.
Okay.
They say comparison is the death of joy, but they had some pretty gnarly experiences. And I think when I was in Al Assad, July 1st in 2005, I think that was the one time that I did fear for my life that we weren't going to make it out of the base, because we just kept getting mortared every 30 minutes, and it got pretty bad. And for the logisticians on the aviation side, pilots, they go out and shoot stuff, right? The rest of us in the rear with the gear, we're just sitting ducks. Like, there's nothing that you can shoot at, so you're just waiting to get shot at. Essentially, it was like if a mortar lands where you are, you're sayonara. And they hit our fuel farm, our ordnance compound, and less than 200 meters away was our FedEx compound, and some of the shrapnel hit our spaces. And that was the one day that I was like, dear God, if I make it out of here, I'll be there. Yeah, that was in 2005, July 1st, and then the subsequent days they kept hitting us, and that was one. And the other one that really stuck to my mind, just the stupidity of the games that we play in the military, watching leadership, the stupid games that they play sometimes with, to keep the Marines busy from doing dumb things. But anyways, we're at the chow hall, and we see a group of Marines coming in, and they are covered in blood. I mean, for us, Al Assad we're on the air station, so we're technically Camp Cupcake. And for the infantry guys, the Raiders, MARSOC, I don't think MARSOC was a thing back then yet. But anyways, they came in to our chow hall, and they're just, the glossed eyes and just tired, exhausted, covered in blood, and they're finally able to get some R&R at Al Assad. And this stupid gunny goes over there and tries to start to yell at them because they're dirty coming into the chow. So, yeah. And a group of us went after us. I was a sergeant at the time. I was a corporal at the time, and several of us went over there and just grabbed the squadron gunny and what is wrong with you, man? These guys are coming from combat, you know. And it's one of those things that you see, I think, across all branches. Somebody gets a little bit of power and they just lose their flipping mind. But I remember them walking in and kind of serendipitous, talking to my boyfriend. I was like, hey, I wonder if you were part of that group that came in, because that imprinted in me, watching them come in. And just, it was like, I can't even imagine or fathom what they've just gone through. And in addition to knowing that even the contractors that we were working with, after they would get done building with us, they got beheaded right outside of our base, Al Assad Air Base. So we had about 20 contractors
20.
that had just been killed, and like our stuff started breaking apart. I was like, it's like, why aren't they coming back? Yeah, it's like, why aren't they coming back? And then like about a week later, they finally gather us together and tell us, oh yeah, I mean they're not back because after they left here, their contract finished, and they were killed outside of the, not too far outside the base, beheaded for basically, what we consider treason, betraying their brethren, and those things like that. That like how do you explain that? What that feels like to a civilian. You don't talk about it.
No.
Um, they're like, oh, you went to Iraq? Yeah, how was that? It's combat, and then
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you say that because I was on the phone the other day with a former SEAL Team 6 member, and we're in a coaching course together, and we were talking about our careers, and he asked me, he's like, does violence bother you that you had to use? I'm like, to be honest with you, no. I'm like, it wasn't like I was going around beating up innocent people. Like, I had to use violence. They're the ones that dictated how it was going down, and I have no problem with anything I've done. And he's like, you don't have to tell me. He's like, I've killed guys putting hatchets through their head, so I have no problem with it either. But he goes, the thing that would get me, and he was talking about using, explosives to breach doors and stuff. And he said they're taught that the blast pressure only goes outside, so it'll go towards them. But internally, they're told there's none. He's like, bro, that's the biggest lie we've ever been told. He said a lot of, I forgot if he was talking about Iraqis or Afghanistans, but they sleep in the living room right by the front door. So he goes, I can't tell how many doors we blasted. And grandma's sitting there with no eyes anymore, or the children get killed. And he'd be like, we look at each other like, what the fuck are we doing here? He's like, that's the stuff that sticks with us, not killing the bad guys. He's like, I can do it all day long. A moment of sleep. So there's a lot of collateral damage. War is just a horrible thing. And I don't care if you're tip of the spear, tier 1 warrior or not, you're still a human being, and it affects all of us.
Yeah, yeah, it's for sure. And I think that's, even after my own journey, that was one of the things that that watching them come in, and just obviously there's the tired piece, right, where they've been out for so long, but seeing, them covered in blood, and even listening to some of like the other interviews, or talking to other fellow Marines and service members, that's the thing that they see the war but not the scars, right? There's the mental scars that get left behind, and they see the uniform but not everything else that's been, that what it takes to carry that uniform. That I think that's why, even more so, that's more passionate about doing what I do now, because of the suicide rates that are going on, right? And there's like, I don't know, 80,000 nonprofit organizations. So there's not a lack of resources. There's not a lack of things, but it's like, how do we reach the people when they've been so silent about what they've experienced? Because unless they want to talk about it, they will. But we have also been ingrained in the service, and even for first responders too, is like, hey, get your shit together. We got a mission to do. On to the next one. So you get taught that, right? To just suck it up. We'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it later. And then later never comes until they're buried in bottles of alcohol, all the different numbing pills, or they resort to suicide. So it's that turmoil of carrying that inside without any sort of release, and that's the hard part. And sorry.
No, not at all. It's amazing. I was just scrolling Instagram a couple hours before, and I saw it was a special operator's site, and they just had a little obituary for a Green Beret. 3 children. His wife was pregnant with their 4th, and he just committed suicide, I'm assuming yesterday. So, I mean, people who aren't around military don't realize that it's just still going on a daily basis. Just because the war's ended doesn't mean that these thousands of men and women who were involved in it have come to any sort of peace. And unfortunately for some of them, I think it's the only way out, which is just so heartbreaking. So, yeah, there was no tangent you just went on. It's such an important fact. All right. So as you're going through your career, this is now '07 was your second deployment. Okay. And
Yep.
then once that ends, where are you still based in California, or have you moved on now at this point?
No, so that deployment, I ended up getting selected along with my best friend now for the Marine Enlisted Commissioning Education Program, MESEP. So we both applied for a program that's enlisted officer essentially. Came back from deployment, and then shortly after coming back from the MEU, went to Quantico, Virginia to start MESEP. So from 2007 through mid 2007 through 2010, I was going through officer candidate school, college, and then commission in
Nice.
2010. But during my time that I was going through college, I would still go back to my old unit in Camp Pendleton, say hi to my friends, and then check in with the major essentially, because I got to the point where I was so unenamored from the Marine Corps, the loss of camaraderie and not seeing them take care of, they we get all these every year, a safety stand down. We joke around and call it a safety stand around, and then death by PowerPoint, right? And you get talked about the suicide, don't. It's like, if you're going to go back, uh, you know, if you need help, call this line, or if you do this. I was like, we do all that, but then on the background, it's like, if you're going to go talk to the chaplain after 7 sessions, then you get reported to the command. The chaplain had to let the command know that they're seeing somebody from their command. I was one of those, because when I came back from that deployment that I was mentioning in 2005, I went to see the chaplain because there was an argument I had. Anyways, went to see the chaplain, and after my sessions, he was like, "Hey, just so you know, if we're going to continue talking, I do have to let the command know." And I'm like, "But you're a chaplain, like you're not a counselor." So kept that in mind. I was like, and as soon as you let a command know, they have to report. Well, I'm the only Latina, you know, in
Yep.
that command. There's female Marines. There's not that many. So it's like when you say anonymous, I'm like, really? It was like, that's
Yeah.
kind of hard to hide when you're the only
Exactly.
one. um, and so yeah, I came back from that deployment on the MEU, got selected for officer, commissioned, and then in 2010 went to the basic school for uh, what the Marine Corps has as the infantry basic school, where all Marine officers get taught basic platoon commander tactics, essentially, because in the Marine Corps everybody's considered a rifleman and every officer is considered a basic platoon commander. So we go through
Okay.
that for 6 months. Um, yeah,
And how was all the schooling? Did you enjoy yourself?
and then
Yeah. Did you?
during that school, yeah, I mean it is through college was interesting because you get a taste of civilian life after, especially after coming from a combat environment and being in that, and now you're dealing with kids that you considered entitled and pompous, and they're complaining about how they don't get to go to their sorority event because they have to stay up and do this thing, and that transition of, this is the other part where, like, the military doesn't do a good job at all, and transitioning from whether you're retiring or getting out, um, but even from school, it was like shifting that mindset. I was like, hey, you're still active duty, but now your job is to go to school, where you're likely going to be the oldest
Right.
person in the room, because at that point I was 25, I think
Senior.
23 or 25.
Senior citizen
um,
at 25.
Senior, yeah. Yeah, right. And especially in the Marine Corps, the retiring age, or the military, the retiring age is 38. So you're already like halfway through the old generation. And then you go to college and they're already looking at you like you're effing old. So that was fun. I collected a lot of
Oh, yeah.
trophies, I will
Nice.
say that.
Now, where are you going to school? What school are you attending?
Yeah. I went to
Okay.
Cal State San Marcos. Yeah. It's about now 45 minutes from Camp
Okay.
Pendleton. So bought my first house. Started doing some real estate investing there, or learned a little bit about real estate investing, and then just embedded myself with school. Graduated with a degree in
Okay.
communications, and clearly I'm still working on it.
It's a never-ending process. So this whole process now, is this 4 years, or this is more than 4 years when you throw in our OCS and everything else?
No, I graduated early. I made it a point to get the hell out of there as
Ah,
quickly as possible because the I loaded all my college classes to graduate in two
wow.
years essentially because yeah, because everything that they were making it to where like our primary job is to go to school, but then the Marine officer instructor that we had, he was an infantry guy, and he wanted us to like start doing training events in Camp Pendleton and insert like do all these infantry tactics to prepare us for OCS or TBS, and we're like, no, our job is to go to school. Like the Marine Corps order even says our job is to go to school. Like I'll do infantry tactics once I get to the basic school. So I was being stubborn and I was being pissy about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna load my classes because I ain't got time for this stuff and
That's amazing
graduate
getting
early.
out in 2 years. Good for you. So once you get out, where?
Yeah. Once I set my mind on things, I like
Yeah, I see that.
I'm this. Like I don't pay
Yep.
attention to
Good for
things.
you. I love the work ethic. So once you graduate, you're promoted to lieutenant, correct? And then where are you assigned?
I got assigned to Jacksonville, North Carolina, Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 26, and that's where the V-22s reside at. And yeah, I thought it was interesting because growing up, when we finally moved to Texas, I would always see the articles about this V-22 Osprey
Yep.
tilt rotor aircraft that was being built in Amarillo, which Amarillo is the closest city to my hometown in Texas. And then I end up in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and I was like, huh,
Yeah, full
how
circle.
serendipitous that I end up working, yeah, with
And
this
then
aircraft.
how is your new assignment? Excited? Someplace you wanted to be?
I was
Good.
excited about it. Yeah, I was excited. I had gone married right before I commissioned because my husband then, or the guy I married, he was enlisted. So got married, moving to a new state, a new assignment for both of us. Now I'm an officer. Now I'm responsible for like the decision making. So I thought, as a second lieutenant coming from the enlisted side, thinking that, my job is to shield uh, my junior Marines from all the BS that comes from leadership, or the good idea fairy that comes from, leadership, especially when they haven't come from the enlisted side and they don't understand the pains of the enlisted Marine. So I went into it with that mindset, and I worked my butt off. Uh, Shortly after getting there is when um, the U.S. ambassador was killed
Okay.
in Benghazi. So I'm not sure
Oh
you've
yeah.
seen 13 Hours.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, so that we were part of the quick reaction force. We spearheaded and established the quick reaction force after the U.S. ambassador was killed, which watching 13 Hours afterwards made it even more, a lot of anger essentially, because knowing all the troops that were in place that could have gone to help the guys out is,
Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. So that was my first deployment into Spain to set up the Quick Reaction Force, Special Purpose MACTF Crisis Response back in 2013.
Okay. And then is that where you're there? Are you there for the rest of your career in that unit?
No, no, I went to, from there, came back from Spain, moved to, finished the assignment in North Carolina, moved back to California. My husband moved to, started working in Camp Pendleton again. I was driving down to Coronado Island to work with the Navy as a budget officer, budget manager for the Navy and Marine Corps budget. Was there for about 3 years, and that's when I was competing a lot. Also got divorced, and that's what led to even more of my sexual trauma, PTSD, and a lot of my hidden subconscious issues starting to come about, especially like with the divorce, and noticing patterns in my life that I just wasn't happy with anymore. And when we got divorced, I also finally got into birth control for the first time. And I've never been on birth control, so that did a whole other. I know it's different for men, but like when women get onto birth control, it changes your mood drastically. And for me, it was not fun at all. And my hormones were all over the place, coupled with how I was feeling inside, dealing with a divorce, dealing with a new job, and there were times that I didn't like myself very much. And this was like, I'm a captain now. Everything technically is, besides my divorce, is going fine. I live in a house that I like. I live in not a house, an apartment that I like. We sold our house. Can drive down to the beach whenever I want. Everything is copacetic. Everything's fine. And then I meet this Lithuanian guy, and every time we would go out, they would assume that he was the service member just because of the way he looked. He had a kind of like this Van Damme look going on to him, until he would open his mouth and they're like, "Oh, you're a foreigner." And started learning about bodybuilding with him, and kind of kicking and screaming. I was like, okay, fine. Decided to start doing it because he had a business of nootropics, and this is before nootropics really were known, at least to me. And now, like with Instagram, they're all over the place, right? Every coffee blend has a nootropic. So back then, we were talking about nootropics while I'm still like active duty, 16-hour job, if not more. And then I started running his companies with nootropics, Airbnb, real estate, and also going through expeditionary warfare school. So that was, I was noticing that I was burying myself in everything that I could so that I wouldn't have any quiet time. Because the minute that I would have quiet time, that's when I would go in. We say in the military, going internal. I would go internal and start all of those things that I hadn't given myself to deal with would start coming about. And he started talking to me about breathwork and meditation, and I'm like, "What's this dude talking about?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." It's like, look, as long as you don't smoke pot around me, we're good. Because pot is bad, and I get kicked out of the Marine Corps. And my brother had a bad accident too, and it was to that point where like, you don't do drugs around me, because I'm a, eat, sleep, shit Marine Corps, and if that is anywhere in my area, I'm not losing my career over it. So I went from that to him talking to me about breath work and meditation, and then next thing I know, we're on a plane going to Peru to go do a retreat, and sitting.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you didn't even know it was heading your way, essentially, huh? He just told you, essentially, trust me?
Yeah. I was like, hey, get in the van. Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, that raid van? Yeah, let me hop in there. That's great. So let's hear how that went for someone that really didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
It went in the matter that it needed to go. There was no preparation. All he told me was, we're going to Peru and we're going to a retreat. We're going to be there at this house for 7 days. And I knew that once we got there, they explained the schedule to us, of what day 1, day 2, and so on and so forth. And I was really excited because he did tell me in advance that there was going to be like some philanthropic work. So I was super excited about that. I didn't know anything about ayahuasca, like what it was. I knew that I was potentially going to go do something that was illegal in the eyes of the Marine Corps. But I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm always asking for permission to breathe, essentially. I'm not going to say anything this time. I didn't tell them that I was going to Peru. I put that I
Okay.
was going to Mexico because to go to Peru, it needed a whole other type of clearance.
Better ask forgiveness and permission anyway. That's my
So,
motto.
yeah, and there was definitely a shift that started happening for me. And I think a lot of us, because like quite a few people that I know of, especially in the advocacy group, it was like 2019 was when a lot of us ended up going to psychedelics. Oh, the woo story for another day. Um, but yeah, the experience of it, he paid for 3 different ceremonies out of the 7-day period. And the first night we couldn't do it because his blood
Okay.
pressure was too high. And so we went into the Mallorca. We did everything minus drink ayahuasca. And the first night that the rest of the group was drinking ayahuasca, there was this like 90-pound girl. Um, and whatever she was going through, it was the shaman there, the guy doing the Icaros, and then we had the nurse, we had a psychologist, and we had ushers. So I felt very safe. Like to me, I was like, okay, clearly they're prepared. And there was another room that they had it set up like in an ER room kind of thing. They
Really?
had a crash card, and so I noticed all of those things. I just
Yeah.
didn't know why they were there. But I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So, if you're about to kick the bucket, at least they're prepared. So, like, to me, I was like, and the fact that they had a psychologist and a nurse on site, that was awesome. And but anyways, we're going through ceremony and she is going like bonkers, kicking, screaming, you name it. And she's like 90 pounds. It took 3 guys to
Wow.
carry her out of there. And I was like, holy shit, like whatever she's going through, I was like, I don't know if I want to sit through
Yeah.
ayahuasca. I was like, I
Check,
don't know if
please.
I'm ready for this. I'm like, what is that? Yeah, check please. I was like, I'll be in Cusco. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go to Machu
exactly.
Picchu again. You have fun here. Um, So yeah, the next morning we have our integration circle and everybody's talking about her experience. And of course, I'm waiting to hear hers. And she's like, I don't know what that was last night. I was like, I still can't put words to it. I was like, but whatever I just went through, I'm at the point in life where like whatever comes at me, I was like, come at me, bro. I can take it. Because if I survive that, she was like, I can survive anything at this
Great
point.
mindset.
So when it was our turn to take ayahuasca on what was their second night, it was our first. I wasn't taken off. I was the last one to transition. I wasn't throwing up. I wasn't doing anything. But when the medicine finally kicked in, like her voice came to mind. I was like, if I can deal with this, I can deal with anything. And then I just started laughing uncontrollably, and like laughing my ass off in the Mallorca. So I was like, I should probably leave because I'm probably disrupting other people. uh, and I went outside. I hadn't puked yet. And as soon as I walked outside, Miguel was ushering me outside. I was like, yeah, I think I need to use the bathroom. And he grabs me and walk outside. And it was just like, whoom, like I had just walked into the scene of, the opening scene of Star Wars where like all that stuff is flying through and they're having like the
Yeah.
credits or the story at the beginning. That's what it felt like. Like I was walking through that and I was like, holy. and I started laughing. I was like, you okay? And like he grabbed me because like I lost my balance. I was like, okay, I need to use the bathroom. And then I go into the bathroom. And suddenly there was a butt ton of flies in the bathroom, all sorts of insects. And I looked at them and it grossed me out and I finally like threw up. I was like, and that's when like I went on the journey. And obviously when you're going through psychedelics, they talk to you about
Yep.
setting an intention, right? Set an intention of what you want to heal within the medicine. And it's not about asking it for lotto tickets or, show me my past or show me my future or in anything like that. And my intention was show me who I am so that I can heal. Help me heal so that I can help others. And the experience of it was not anything that I can put into words, and not anything that I'm now that I as I've been going through this, it's like not anything that I want to put into words, because I'm assuming like you probably feel the same. It's like the minute that you try to put the words into it, it's like no matter, there's not enough words to describe it in any language. It's
Yeah,
a
it's
feeling,
ineffable.
right?
That's the word I use.
And
It's inexplicable. And I say anytime
ineffable.
that as soon as I start speaking about it, the words dilute the magic. So, I try to explain to people kind of how I
Yeah.
feel, but someone used that word in my class the other day, ineffable, and I looked it up and I'm like, that's the perfect word. It's just inexplicable. Words are never going to do it justice. Now you could try to explain so you can sort of give someone who's never experienced it, you know, your experience, but again, words, people usually look at you sideways like, what? There's no way that happened. Unless you journey with the medicine, and then you could talk to someone. How can you explain it? It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, you can explain it. Y- It's, and as I've been going, like the advocacy work that I'm doing now, it, when people ask me, well, what is it like? I almost don't want to tell them anymore what it's like. I was like, look, because then they
Yeah.
set an expectation, right? They're like, oh, I never took off. I mean, there are people that get blocked, consider it woo woo or whatever, that never take off because the medicine is not for them, which is fine. Um, but when you start getting too into the weeds and they want to know every granular detail of what it's like, I was like, look, dude, that what it was for me is probably not going to
Yeah.
be for you. It's because we all have our own things to heal through, essentially. And our preparation was probably not the same. There's all of these different factors. Will you potentially see fractals, geometry kind of thing? Maybe not. Maybe you'll be laughing your ass off the entire time. Maybe you'll be crying the entire time. Maybe you'll be puking or the entire time. Like, you don't know how
Yeah.
your body's going to react. So for me to tell you, like, I don't want to set conditions for you of what to expect. What I will tell you is that you need to prepare and you need to
Mm-hmm.
integrate and you need to question how things are being run in whatever environment you're going to go to. Like, who are the providers? What training do they have? How often do they let their healers rest? All of those things. I was like, I will talk about my experience. I'm starting to keep it more for me.
Yeah. Plus, your
If that makes
experiences
any sense.
can differ from one to the next. You drink on Tuesday night if you're in
Yeah.
Peru and you're doing, multiple journeys. Your journey on Thursday could be nothing like the one that you just experienced on Tuesday. Like, same person, same medicine, could be the same batch. Things are totally, totally different. Unrecognizable from one ceremony to the next.
Yeah, the medicine, it's so, it's gonna do what
Yeah.
it needs to do, right? And if it doesn't, but it's definitely not you and I were talking about this the other day. I was like, it's not the quick fix to everything. It's
No.
not the GLP-1, right? For some people, it does work that way, whether it's ibogaine, whether it's ayahuasca, psilocybin. Ibogaine, ayahuasca, and 5-MeO are probably the three more extreme. I'm not a shaman. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a theologist or anything like that. That's just what I've read across, is like that those are the three
Right.
strongest one. Ibogaine being the longer lasting, more strong because of how long you're going through it. Then there's iboga, right? There's iboga and there's ibogaine. There's ayahuasca, and then 5-MeO, which can last between 15 minutes to 30 minutes, but then it shoots you out into the
Yeah.
cosmos kind of thing. That's what I always hear.
Or you could do it intramuscularly, and now
But
journeys are lasting like 5 hours on 5-MeO. So, it's extended.
yeah, yeah, I was Brian and I were talking about it the other day. It was like Joe Rogan was talking to somebody in a podcast. It was like they can control,
Yep.
the drip kind of thing, and then you can decide. I was like, why would anybody want to do that? And I'm like, why would anybody want to go do ibogaine for 36 hours? I was like, same concept. Uh, but you do have to do some introspection as to why are you seeking these medicines. And when people say, oh, these medicines are calling out to me, are they really calling out to you, or is your social media SEO now just,
Yeah.
shoving all these things in your face? So there's a lot of filtering and discerning you have to do. But more than anything, it's the preparation. Mine was, I didn't do any preparation or integration after my first ayahuasca experience. And out of the 3 sessions that we were supposed to do, I only did 1. I also know that's not the norm, right? Um, it took me the next 3-4 years. That's why they say that there's a neuroplastic window after you sit with any of these medicines where you can truly rewire your brain and integrate properly, especially with ibogaine. Because if you don't, then you can potentially revert back to old habits, because your brain and your body don't know how to maneuver through whatever just experienced. So if you don't have somebody to talk to and kind of guide you in all of that, you're like a kid again. You're like,
Yeah.
what do I do with my hands? So you go back
Yep.
to the familiar, which is why some people either end up chasing more medicine to try to get more answers, or they revert back to old habits. And then you have people like, I know you've had him in your podcast, Scotty. Scotty took a completely different, like one
Yeah.
session changed his life, right? And and he's been pretty gung ho about his discussions on ibogaine, which is great. Like I love how much he explains what he's experienced and how much has helped him, because there are those instances. I'm seeing with Marcus Capone, the Luttrells, like one session healed them. Um, but there's also
Much.
work to be done. There's protocols to follow, and there's that safe space that has to be provided. It's not. I was happy and lucky in a sense that the place that he chose in Peru did have the safe space, safe container there, but we never did any integration afterwards, which is why 3 years later, I was still trying to figure out what the hell a lot of those things meant. The schizophrenia, psychosis stuff that they talk about, that is real. Because I would experience parts where I'm like, am I really alive? Like, am I here? And like, I would question so many things. I was like, and I had nobody to talk to about it because I was still active duty. So it's like, if we start administering this to active duty personnel, okay, let's make sure that our infrastructure is
Yeah.
ready for that, because we barely have the therapist to begin with. And oh, by the way, if you even if you go to a chaplain, the chaplain is going to have to report you after 7 sessions. So if you're trying to keep it hush hush, it may
Yeah, I
not
can't imagine
work.
not speaking to people after this and integrating and um, just kind of picking apart my journey to see what they thought and where do I go from here, and is this normal? Did you feel this? Did you go, um, after every one of my, thank God, I was retired when I first started trying psychedelics, so I was able to speak publicly about it. I was able to reach out, and for people that are active that cannot do so now, or who choose not to do integration, or who are not offered integration, they don't realize it's the most important part. Like, the medicine does not heal you. It kind of cracks you open. It gives you awareness. It lets you see things from a different perspective. It may allow you to take things that were buried in your subconscious, that were extremely painful, and bring them up to your conscious. But if you don't integrate them, if you don't change people, places, and things, yeah, most people are going to revert back to where they were prior to the psychedelics.
Probably sounds crappy to say it. It's a hype right now, right? It's becoming trendy
Yeah.
to do psychedelics. But we have to be very careful with it, right? These medicines are new to Western culture. And even for me, as being, an indigenous woman, when I say indigenous, on my father's side, I've recently learned my grandmother is native in Mexico. She was the daughter of a chief. My grandmother on my mom's side also, indigenous. So I'm indigenous on the Mexican side, not indigenous on the U.S. side. So before people get hung up on that. but even for me, like knowing that they exercise plants, right? I don't take any ownership nor try to say this is the way it needs to be done. No, I'll go to the cultures that have been doing it for millennia and follow their protocol. You tell me what I need to do. Because all the other stuff that I've been trying in the US, even though it has a fancy stamp on it, doesn't mean that it has been helping me. I took the, the anxiety, depression medication. I tried the talk therapy through a psychologist that the VA gave me. I tried talking to the chaplain. I, went to church, whether it was a non-denominational church, Christian, Catholic, Lutheran, you name it, Jehovah's Witness, and I was lost, right? So the medicine showed me, like you said, it showed me a pathway, but it was because I followed, not so much the first time. I had a pretty clean diet because I was coming out of competing, so my body was pretty clean. But the follow-on process of keeping my body clean afterwards, hell no. Like right after ayahuasca, we were in Cusco, because I think that's the closest to Sacred Valley. And him and I were hanging out in Cusco, and then went and got chicha, the alcoholic chicha morada, and then had some mojitos, and it's like completely the opposite of what you're supposed to do coming out of ayahuasca. So yeah, I didn't integrate it properly. But when I went this last year with my buddy Justin down in Austin, he's got a very rigorous protocol. Like, this is what you're do and not do before. So I definitely got my ass kicked again last year, but following the integration of it. So the minute that those, we're still going to have, we're human. We're still going to have, things that trigger us. Going down, the 50 into Claremont, drivers still annoy me. But now it's more like humor, right? Instead of like getting, road rage and trying to chase somebody down because they cut me off or they didn't turn their blinker on. It's 2026, people. That's a long overdue technology that a lot of us haven't figured out yet. But like, I don't get triggered by those things anymore like they used to in the past. And why? Because now I understand that, those are not what shape my life. Those are not who I am, but it's still part of the human aspect, the cosmic joke of being a human kind of thing. But yeah, I'm randy. Sorry.
No, not at all.
It's integration is so important. Yeah, I think that's. I love that you joined us on the call for the operation integration that we're working for the state of Florida, because even though Florida is so far behind compared to other states, we need to ensure, as the largest per capita veteran population, and which a lot of first responders are veterans, athletes too are veterans. Like, we need to do better than what other states. I'm not saying they're doing it wrong. I'm just saying that we need to set the parameters and the protocols first before we open the door and say, hey, psychedelics for everybody. Let's set the protocols and the training in place before we just open Pandora's.
Yeah, absolutely. They're beautiful medicines. They've been used for thousands of years, but listen, they can be used in a destructive manner, and humans can corrupt anything. So, and just for people who are watching right now, contraindicators for using them would be if you're on SSRIs or antidepressants, you have to wean off of those slowly and be off for about a month, usually, before you journey with medicines. Disqualifiers usually are people who are schizophrenic or who've had psychotic episodes before. There's one more category that's usually a disqualifier. I'm forgetting right now in terms of mental health issues.
Heart conditions.
I don't know if you. Yeah, but
both SSRIs, schizophrenic, and what it's going to be. That's why the psychologist is important, right? Because they'll weed out like whether they have any sort of schizophrenic tendency.
Yeah.
But Yeah, now I'm drawing a blank. Maybe
Exactly.
the third one.
So I'm disqualified. I'm out. Cancel plans. Mortgage
Yeah.
out. But yeah, I mean, it's medicine, and it was put on here on Earth, as far as I'm concerned. Like I love having theoretical, not theoretical discussions, religious discussions about people who don't believe in him because they're religious. And first thing I'll ask is, do you believe in God? Yeah. Did God put everything, make everything essentially in this universe? Yeah. Create. And did he put, everything in nature? Yeah. Okay. These plants are in nature. There's no processing. And how do you, disagree? And then they'll usually go to, well, the Bible says that you're not supposed to put anything that's going to change your mind, not change your mind, but affect your mind. And, I said, yeah, we're not talking about drugs like cocaine or any other thing like that. Like these are here to heal you. And, you're going to get people who, regardless of what you say, what argument you bring forth, they're going to disagree with you. But I had a meme posted for a while, and it was God, and the meme said, "Why didn't you give us medicines to help us?" I don't know if it said mental health or whatever it is. He's like, "Didn't you see all the plants I sent?" And they were like, "Oh." So, I just, that's my thought on it. The creator put these medicines here for us to use, and they've been used for thousands of years, and they've been used safely, and they just are magic as far as I'm concerned. But like you said, there needs to be pre and post integration. Need to change people, places, and things. There's work to be done. The medicines do not heal; they just provide that pathway to allow you to do so.
Yeah, which and then that's the part where I get the discussion. So one, like I get the discussion, I'm like, well, why can't I just heal without doing the woo woo shit? I'm like, okay, I'll come back to that one. But to your point about um, psychedelics and religion, there is a book I haven't read it yet. It's psychedelics for Christians or Christians,
Okay.
yeah, psychedelics for Christians. And then the author's name is failing me now. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry. Um, but definitely worth, just based on the title itself, it perked my interest. Governor Perry brought it up during the Joe Rogan podcast as well, because he's, Christian believer and super Republican. So to change his mind of psychedelics, there's the Netflix series as well with Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind, and it goes through the various different plants or psychedelics. But all that they do is helping you remember, right? Because you are in that state. You let go. When you truly surrender, you let go of all of those filters and taboos that you've placed
Yeah.
over the years. So for me, one of the ones that helped me understand that even more, and this was after ayahuasca, we did, I believe it was LSD, and we were just sitting in the room or laying down in the bedroom, him and I, and it was a lot of the sexual taboos that came up of what women are allowed and not allowed to do, right? So growing up, my dad would tell me not to wear like sleeveless shirts because then it looked like I was, hooching around kind
Yeah.
of thing without saying it that, but like that was I was being explicit. So me wearing tank tops or shirtless sleeveless shirts was absolutely no go. It As a kid, and even like I could feel that even as an adult when I would go visit him, if I was wearing, a kind of like a sleeveless shirt, it was like
Yeah.
not something he liked. Um, and and then in, other cultural thing was like, you know, and kind of with, I guess, Catholicism, the only position is missionary. Like all these different things that get ingrained into your brain, particularly as a woman. And then within our culture too, like how, you're supposed to be proper. How do you walk properly?
Sure.
How do you dress properly? You're not showing your butt cheeks coming out of your shorts, crazy cleavage. Of course, times have changed now.
Drastically.
And God almighty, some of the stuff I see women wearing to go to the grocery store, I'm like,
Yeah, it's insane.
chica. um, and yeah, so we sitting through LSD. So a lot of, as I was going through it, it was this continuous like weaving in and out of pleasure and disgust and anger. It was like the minute I would start feeling pleasure, like arousal in the medicine, something would come through and like put the finger of shame. Like, how dare you feel good about this? Like, you're not supposed to. And then I would go back into my like almost child self and start crying. And then the sexual trauma would come about, right? It was like, and because he was laying next to me, and I was like, well, if he's raping me right now or doing anything, like, there's nothing I can do. Like, I'm
Yeah.
literally incapacitated right now, um, because I'm still going through this, LSD trip. But then I was like, and even if he is, I was like, it feels good. I know this sounds very
No, not at all.
twisted to whoever might
Yeah,
be
maybe
listening,
other
but
people, but
I was like,
I've
it
been
is
into
good. Like, it
medicine. Yeah.
feels good. Yeah. Yeah, so then I would go back and start enjoying it and feeling happy and euphoric and orgasmic about it. And then it was this constant for like, I don't know, 3, 4 hours of that going back and forth, going back and forth. And in hindsight, what I came back to it was like, we give power to externals. We give power to words. Like, if somebody calls me, I was talking to Brian about this last night. I was like, if somebody calls me a spick, I'm not going to get offended because then I'm giving them power. If somebody calls me a brownie or whatever, like, I release the power. It's a matter of like what I know the truth about myself, of who I am at the core. That's the other part of the medicines that kind of help you is like, hey, sticks and stones after that. And like, I'm not saying that things don't upset you,
Yeah.
going back to the road rage thing, but you're just not like, it's humor. You find the humor in things. I was like, really? That's what you think? Okay, well, whatever. Um, but it also makes you cognitive of, okay, is that really true? Is there a lesson here? Is there something that I can learn from this to introspect and evolve? But it's not anything, at least from my experience, that's now crippling you. You see things, you observe them, and then analyze, kind of like you do that, you know, surgery within your own brain and your body. It's like, does this feel right, or is
Yeah.
this noise? And then you go about your day. So that's other part of the medicine that probably doesn't get talked about enough. And that's why, when you're talking to your, especially for men's circles, I love the fact that more and more men's retreats are coming about, because we have so many women's retreats. There's a women retreat every weekend, and you throw a stone
Yep.
and you'll hit a women's retreat. But giving a safe space for men to allow them to talk about things that only men feel, because there's things that
Oh, yeah.
only women feel. I don't care how you try to paint it, right? Like, men, women, feminine, masculine. I'm probably going to catch some hate for it. It's okay. But it's like there's certain things that only as a man, masculine, you'll feel. There's things that as a woman, hormonally, you'll feel. And we need to provide the spaces for them. When those spaces are provided, you allow them to heal and talk about things of like men need men in order to understand what are the things that enable their masculinity, right? That brotherhood and that container. Same thing for women. But when you're able to bring them both into a ceremony, especially when there's been trauma, and both of those come together, that's a whole other different thing of healing. I feel that I finally let go of my trauma during this last one. Um, the owner of the property, I'd been sitting outside for like pretty much the entire ceremony. And it was very energetic, and without going too deep into it, but it came to a point where he handed me my bottle of water because it was hot and I pouring it over my head. And when I felt his arm, I grabbed him and he came up behind me and I started just bawling, like sobbing, like I don't know since when. And all he said, I was like, "You poor girl, this is what you've been waiting for." Because like I wasn't coming out of the medicine, I was just kind of stuck in this loop. But when he held me, I melted completely. And it was like a scream of anger, pain, but also like I finally felt held, seen, understood. And that was a whole other different container. So yes, there's the importance of giving more space to masculine to engage that. And, you know, the women providing that sacred space as well, and eventually bringing them both together. So that's why a lot of the people that are holding space, you'll see one woman in there, because that's very important. One or two women that are holding space in ceremony. Not so much maybe when they're doing the fire discussions or anything like that, but in ceremony, there's something that happens there that kind of brings it all together. And especially for men that have been angry for so long at women, or vice versa, when you put those two together,
Yeah.
oof,
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
magic,
It needs to be
magical.
balanced out.
And
So, listen, tell everyone what you're doing present day. You're involved in Florida Ibogaine, which you founded. So, can you tell us, what that's all about, the organization, what you're doing, what you hope to be doing, a year or two from now?
So, Florida for Ibogaine, I'm the lead for it in the state as an ambassador with Americans for Ibogaine. Florida for Ibogaine is essentially the social media handle. Each state has that. Each state that's doing legislative action essentially to
Okay.
change policy, or for the medicalization axis. So, it's not an official nonprofit. The official nonprofit is Americans for Ibogaine. Uh, but started this in essence to for the advocacy piece for the safe, affordable, and controlled access of these plant and animal medicines. Now that the executive order has been signed, we're shifting focus. There's a group of us, I think there's about 20 of us, um, semi-active on it. I'm traveling up and down the state essentially to educate people more than anything, and to get them to contact their congresspeople and senators for what we're hoping to do next. Is right now it's called Operation Integration, still playing around with the title. And it's to ensure that what we were talking before, the protocols are set in place. Executive order is signed, so it's only a matter of before each state starts changing and allowing for psychedelics as therapies. But what hasn't been thoroughly discussed, and what was learned with Colorado, and I just blanked out on the other state, Colorado for now, is that they didn't have the people trained, right? We don't have enough psychotherapists. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to support this. So as I've been working on the advocacy piece, that's been a big portion of it, is talking to even Orlando VA, which is rated #1 hospital in the nation. And they also have the largest patients, because we have the largest capita, essentially. And there's a lot of people, Orlando is known as a medical destination, as it is. Florida is known as a medical destination, medical health. So that brings in a lot of patients and customers, if you may. So working with them, and I was like, look, it's not a matter of you just having somebody come and give them MDMA. We need to ensure that the protocol integration psychotherapy is also provided. This is not a Hims or Hers subscription, an Amazon monthly subscription that you get on a fancy package. Like, there's other pieces to these medicines that have to set in place, so that we don't, give another SSRI with the mask of psychedelic medicine, synthetic psychedelic medicine, because then we're just
Yeah.
right back to the same thing. So we want to ensure that the people are qualified, that there are protocol certifications that are put into place now with the current structure, right? Medical structure, and then but include the aspect of how psychedelics operate. So changing the verbiage to include psychedelic medicines, but more importantly, focus on the integration piece. So right now, the policy, the bill policy essentially that we're talking about, it's called Operation Integration. And I'd be happy to share the link for anybody that wants to go in there and sign the petition, especially right now this year that we are in elections essentially for the state of Florida for governor and Congress and the lieutenant governor positions. We're going to need their say in this, right? To ensure that we set up the right parameters going forward. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when happens, we want to ensure that the logistics, the infrastructure is set up, which we're not, we win battles but we win wars through logistics. And this is one of those things. We have to ensure that logistics are set in place and the procedures. Tactics, techniques, and procedures. That's what we're asking for. And then on the side, I'm working on building, which you read during my bio. What started this is essentially Phoenix Rising Holistic Center. And my intent of building Phoenix Rising is of ensuring that first and foremost, we're taking this as a holistic approach. Learning that from my own upbringing as a kid, my upbringing in the Marine Corps, how you get prepared, right, to go into battle. Excuse me. When you're going into these medicines, you're essentially going into battle, but it's just one of the mind, right? So you prepare to get into that. So when you're coming here, it's like we're looking at gut health. We're looking at your blood work, hormones, testosterone, free testosterone, progesterone, because that impacts how all of this functions. Is that we need to study that a lot more before we just start throwing psychedelics at everybody. So learn the fundamentals first. Come here, detox, cold plunge, biohacking, all of that, to include, I'm looking at him because he's working on the outdoor gym now. Get the body moving, and then we'll determine if the psychedelic is needed, essentially. So the psychedelic is more like the cherry on top. It's not the main thing. It's a tool, kind of like we've been discussing. But if we don't address the fundamentals first, yes, the psychedelic could potentially work. We're seeing it happen. But when you go back, we want to ensure that you are empowered to be able to sit in your living room, in your car, in your office, and sit and give yourself 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of breath work, or 5 minutes of just doing body work, right? That's what this is meant to be, essentially, and provided a space where you can feel safe, and if you're going to sit with the medicine, have the right trained people to serve the medicine, and under the right protocol with the right diet. Everything potentially is going to be grown here. I'm also working with different farms that are around my area, instead of going to Walmart for stuff that's been plastered with pesticides, and then serving it here and calling it holistic. So very mindful of where we're bringing the foods from, and even if not for the people that are coming here, even just for ourselves, right? We noticed the other day we went to BJ's, bought a pack of meat, and it was not good. We got food poisoning from it. It looked pretty on the packet. It was all nice and red, and then the next day it was not pretty. Have you seen how they're coloring salmon? They're like dyeing it.
Oh, yeah.
And repackaging
And
it.
there's some type of meats now that are essentially grown in a lab. It's crazy what they're serving us, or trying to serve us as, and pass it off as food. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 20, 50 years.
Yeah, it's scary, which is why I love where I'm at. Like, my neighbors have cows, horses. He's got sheep now. This one to the left, they have horses as well. So building that infrastructure, how it was, many, many, many years ago, where the barter trading system with each other. I was like, hey, I have this, I'll trade you for this. We could go back to that, but for some people, that's too outwardly. I'm like, fine, we'll teach you how to grow your tomatoes. There's a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with him, down in Naples area.
No.
Alfie is his name, and they have seed to table. They have a couple of stores in Naples, and they started opening a kind of like a holistic retreats as well. They're not doing any sort of psychedelics, to my knowledge, but they do a lot of food to table, ground to table type of retreats because they grow everything, and he also sells to local stores. And they have a restaurant where everything that they grow is what gets
Really?
served in the restaurant. So hopefully
Yeah.
partner with Alfie to bring, because he's already got the whole infrastructure set up. Like it's going to take me a couple of years to get the other 5 acres of land set up to grow things. So yeah, learn from the people that are
Exactly.
doing it, horticulture type of thing, and bring that here. So you ask about what am I doing in 2 years? God willing, we got the Mallorca, the geodomes, the Temescal, the cold plunge, the geodome sweat lodge with cold plunge inside, the outdoor gym, bringing in my own Marine Corps stuff of the crucible. I made a slide comment on my last post of the crucible. You set up yourself physically, right? And when you go through the crucible, and the crucible being the psychedelic medicine, but you've prepared in advance. So making like an obstacle course kind of around the property here, because there's enough room to do that. And martial arts is essentially what brought me into the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps martial arts program, essentially. And I've jokingly been talking a lot to Gareth Hornell down in Miami,
Gareth.
and my brother Michael Craigholm, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna need you guys to come here and throw some people around, especially as we do like men's retreats, getting them to move and do those testosterone building activities, and even for women too. Like it's like women, we were talking earlier about weights, right? I was like, we get so caught up that I'm gonna get all bulky. I was like, but lifting 10, 20 pounds and getting yourself that weight, and then it also helps you understand all the weight that we're putting on men too. So doing that, I have a lot of plans. It's honing it and getting the product delivered and hopefully get that done by November.
I'm excited to see it all come to
So
fruition. I can't wait to get up there myself on the compound grounds, get thrown around by Gareth, and see everything else going on. You are definitely a woman who gets things done. So
yeah, and I'm excited with
you're a woman who gets things
what's that.
done. So I know this is going to. This is not just a vision. This is going to be completed.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it because anytime that I start questioning it, I go back to the whole breath work and meditation. I'm like, God, give me a sign. Like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Or is this my ego thing? We jokingly say people go to one ayahuasca ceremony and all of a sudden they think they're a shaman. I was like, am I doing that? Like, tell me, show me, give me a sign of, am I in the right path? And anytime that I start swaying from what I've been working on the last few years, I'll start getting more phone calls or emails about, how do I have access? How can let me know when your space is going to be ready, and it just kind of confirms where I'm going. I'm not saying I'm going to be the one serving the medicine. I'm providing a space, and then looking to partner with the right people that are, learning breath work, learning meditation, that have gone through it themselves, because there's a different connection, right? My perspective, I'm not talking crap on doctors or psychotherapists that are doing therapy and they haven't experienced sexual trauma. That's not what I'm trying to say. But we go into this stuff as battle buddies. A lot of times you bring your buddy because I was like, hey, I want you to come with me, and you understand the process, and this guy has been through it and I helped them. So building that network, which is great, connecting with you, connecting with Gareth, Michael, and Ian McCall with Athlete's Journey Home, and it's been quite the journey. I'm excited of where it's at right now, and even more of seeing it come to fruition. And maybe 2 years down the road, I said, screw it, and I'm selling it and moving to Brazil.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, no one knows the future, but I'm sure if you do, you're going to be in the medicine there as well, and it's life changing stuff. If you would have told me a little over 2 years ago, I'd be doing what I'm doing and speaking about what I'm speaking about and thinking the things I'm thinking, I would have laughed in your face. But it's been the most cathartic, profound healing journey, and the men and women who've been brought into my life. It's funny. We were talking last night. I was on a podcast, my buddy Clinton, and we were talking about life being essentially that train where people get on and are potentially on that train for 1 or 2 stops, and others who could be on for the length of the journey. And as you go and you ascend to this higher consciousness, not that we're better than anyone else, but you'll shed people, and maybe it's not such a bad thing because others are getting on that train after the other ones get off, and they're the ones that align with your purpose and your vision and the way you feel now and the way we feel now. I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there's a lot of empathy and love involved when I know myself in the past there's been a lot of anger, unresolved grief and trauma. So these medicines have helped me resolve that grief and trauma. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's wonderfully said. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's true. I was like, that's another part that's not talked about enough. Is like as you go through this healing journey, you realize how many of those ships were trauma bonded ships. Entrepreneur endeavors, relationships, friendships, ships. And when you come back from them, or as you start growing, it's part of growing, and it's okay. You can still love them. They played an important part of your life. My ex-husband, I still held a love for him because he played an important part of my life during those 7-10 years that we were married and dating. My ex-boyfriend that I did ayahuasca with, maybe if it wasn't for him, like I probably wouldn't have gone to ayahuasca, or I would have gone much later in different perspectives. So things happen, and again, discussion for another day, how deep you want to go into it, but I am grateful for every single one of my experiences. I am grateful for every person that has come in and out of my life, because each of them have shaped the woman that I am to them today. Whether you like her or not, this is still evolving every day. I make mistakes every day, but I'm not crucifying myself for them anymore. It's like I make a mistake, I might be upset about it, I learn from it, laugh about it, move on. Or sometimes I grab a bag of Doritos because I love Doritos, and sit with it, eat a bag of Doritos, and then go run 3 miles the next day or something like that. But yeah, be humble enough to know that there's always growth, and that if people are leaving your life, that it's okay. There's something more in the future, especially for our first responders and veterans, that when they lose somebody, it's like it's hurtful, and it's like they tie that, so hold on to it for so long. It's like there's something better. Keep the faith. Above all, keep the faith.
And learn to give yourself grace when you make those mistakes, because I've said a million times, I've yet to meet an infallible human being. All of us make mistakes. We're always going to make mistakes. It's just part of life, part of human nature. Just have grace with yourself. You made a mistake, cool. Put it aside, get on to the next, and you're going to live a happier life. So listen, it's been great talking to you. All of the links will be in the bio, but if people want to get in touch with you, tell them how to do so. Anything you want to promote, do it here, and all the information will be in the bio as well, please.
Well, fastest way to get a hold of me is through Instagram. It's at Marisol Salgado G. You can find all my other profiles through there, which includes what I'm working on with Phoenix Rising Holistic Center, and then the advocacy piece for the state of Florida with Florida for Ibogaine. So if you can't figure out how to spell my name, look up at Florida for Ibogaine on Instagram, at Phoenix Rising Holistic Center on Instagram, or at Marisol Salgado G on Instagram, and then shoot me a message. I typically answer the same day, and then we'll connect from there. But thank you so much for this opportunity to getting to know you better.
Not at all. You kidding me?
And yeah, I'm so excited
Absolutely.
to
I
have you out
can't
here, man.
wait. It's been great talking to you. So glad you came on. Been great getting connected with you. And can't wait to see what the future brings. So listen, guys, if you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe. And Marisol, look forward to seeing what the future brings for both of us.
Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma